Nudrat, and I am talking to Mike Moynagh about GodSend, his book that is about new Christian communities, which is a sense of support, really, for people who might be starting one of these. We're talking about chapter 5, which is how can we sustain our initiative? Mike, how do we build a Christian community that lasts?
Well, Nudrat, the most important thing is to think about this at the beginning. Most people start off these new Christian communities, they gather a team, they launch into it. Then later on, they say, oh, how can we make this sustainable? But in a way, it's too late if you ask this question later on. You need to be asking this question right at the beginning. How can we start a new Christian community in a way that is sustainable for us? And so you've got to build sustainability in right at the beginning. Let me just give you one example, if you will. If, as we hope and pray, people come to faith in your new Christian community, then that's great. But it may well be that your community comes to the end of its natural life. Now, if that happens, where are these people going to go on worshipping? What's going to happen to them? Now, if you think about this right at the beginning, you can start answering this question in the very way that you set up this new Christian community. So, for example, if these people are going to go on worshipping, they need to be connected to other parts of the church. They need to be connected to your parent congregation, perhaps, or to other new Christian communities that your local church might have. Now, if you're going to build those connections, you can start right at the very beginning. So it may be that your local church, you have a notice sheet. Maybe the notices are all online. Well, print them off and include in the printed version the fact, maybe you've got a luncheon club with unemployed people. Include in your printed notices that this luncheon club with unemployed people meets every Wednesday lunch. Now, put some copies of those printed notices on the table of your luncheon club and watch what happens. The people may, someone's going off for coffee, so someone just picks up, going to get a cup of coffee, so someone just picks up the notice sheet, looks at it, notices that they're listed, and they register that they're part of something bigger. They don't say anything. You throw all these notices away at the end. Sorry about the trees, but people have noticed that they're part of something bigger. Then maybe after 3 or 4 months, someone comes to you and say, look, I see on the notice sheet that you're starting a choir for the carol service. Would I be allowed to join? Maybe someone else comes to you and say, I notice you're looking for someone to help your treasurer with the church finances. Well, I've done this sort of thing before. Can I help? And so what happens is that people in your luncheon club, even though they wouldn't call themselves Christians, they wouldn't go to church on Sunday, they wouldn't really think of themselves as followers of God. Even so, they begin to volunteer for other activities in your local church. And that will have 2 effects. One, it'll speed their journey into Christian faith, we hope and pray. But secondly, if they become Christians, they will be connected with your local parent church, so that if your community comes to the end of its natural life, they have a route to another center of worship where they can feel at home because they've begun to get to know some of the other people in your parent church. Now, thinking about the end really encourages you to do something at the beginning. And this is really helpful for you. And this is the core principle of this whole chapter. Do stuff at the beginning that will help your community to last for a long time or be sustainable.
I'm thinking about people who end up in leadership, sort of helping lead some of these groups, these Christian communities. How do we build in some way of, a leadership coming one after the other, so that we don't actually get, we find ourselves in a situation where there are no leaders or no one leading the group. or just connected to one person and dependent on one person. Because that can be quite difficult for the Christian community.
Absolutely, it can. And it may well be, if you're leading a new Christian community, the time will come when you have to give up your leadership for one reason or another. And the phrase that we use in the GodSend book is, when that happens, will you leave a legacy or a gap? Now, if you've done nothing to bring on other leaders, you're going to leave a gap. And it may be that your community comes to the end of its life because of the gap. On the other hand, if you've been really passionate about bringing on future leaders, then you'll leave a legacy. So the really important thing is, from the very beginning, to be looking out for potential leaders. You know, you may not know who they are, but share your leadership, your decision-making with the whole community. As you share your decision-making, what are we going to do next? How do we do this? See how people respond. Call for volunteers. You know, tap people on the shoulder and say, can you help me with this? Or can you help me with that? And as these volunteers emerge, from them will become your future leaders. I mean, I'm thinking of Philip and Stephen in Acts. We first read about them in connection with feeding the widows, and they're helping to organize the food for the widows. But later on, they become leading evangelists in the Jerusalem church. Now, they emerged from the distribution of food. And it may be that many of your future leaders will emerge from the volunteering practical tasks that they do in the community, and you gradually give them more and more responsibility. So I would be saying, be passionate about bringing on future leaders, invest in them, spend time with them, mentor them, encourage them, so that when you leave, you don't leave a gap, you leave a legacy of new leaders who carry on from where you started.
That's absolutely brilliant that we've captured both those things, because there's a link, isn't there, where you're saying be intentional from the beginning of the group to build in those links to a parent church, so that if anything was to happen, we don't leave people high and dry. They've still got a way of connecting with the worshiping community. And that's the same with leadership. Don't leave a gap, leave a legacy, using the volunteers, that idea of sharing leadership, not clinging on to it. And
Nudrat, if I can interrupt, if you share your leadership like that, if you're passionate about sharing your decision making, inviting people to volunteer and so on, if you're passionate about that, then it builds resilience into your community as well, because you've got lots of people helping, so that if one or two of you go ill or absent for some reasons, the whole thing can continue, because there are a whole army of volunteers who are gathering around and providing support. So this is the key to resilience as well in that community. Just be passionate about inviting people to volunteer. Don't be shy, invite them. It doesn't matter if they say no. And then nurture them so that some of them will become future leaders, we hope and pray.
You've used this sentence in this chapter. I was reading and I was struck by it. God is full of surprises. Let the Holy Spirit take you as far as the Spirit wants. And I think that is a really, really good reminder for us when we're thinking about these Christian communities, that although we might be starting them off, with friends, but actually, really, we are in partnership with God in this. It's not us on our own. It's been brilliant talking to you, Mike. And till the next time, I'll see you later.
See you.